Good morning, everybody. It's Jeremy Fletcher here. Looking forward to talking with you this morning about, let me make sure that I got the time on there. Okay. Bringing a topic today about behavior change. And as we're moving through the Lifestyle Physical Therapist course, we are now getting into the topic a little bit more, behavior change, talking more about mechanisms in how behavior change occurs, and so we really have to just be students of human behavior to understand that. And so one of the topics I want to talk about this morning with you guys is observational learning. So many of you may have remembered observational learning from your introductory psychology courses prior to applying to physical therapy school. And so what observational learning is it's essentially learning that occurs through observing the behaviors of others, and it's a form of social learning. And so, I thought it'd be an interesting topic to talk about today. Hopefully we can go through some relevance that I've seen throughout my career, and just relevance to what I'm currently doing, I guess, with some of my other efforts, and then also, some quick tips for the clinic and applications of this material today. So like I said, observational learning is really like it's a social learning theory. Social learning requires some sort of social model, whether that be a parent, a sibling, a friend, a teacher, a coach, or a physical therapist in our case. And so what I thought about I would talk with you first about is the scenario where I saw observational learning occurring within the military. And it's a big social experiment, the military. It's a fantastic place to practice and observe human behavior. So that's what I thought I'd talk about with you this morning briefly, was an experience where I was a physical therapist that was operating in a brigade combat team. So I was one physical therapist for a population of about 3,500 soldiers. And so my job, as all the other medical team members' job as well, was to return soldiers back to duty, and to try to do that in the quickest, fastest way. And so what was, obviously I felt like I was understaffed between myself and a physical therapist, technician or assistant. And so I kind of took this mindset of the Salvation Army, and I wanted to do the most good. And so I knew that I had to include some sort of program that allowed people access to rehabilitative care without accessing the physical therapist. And at that time, there was a move in the Army's physical fitness programs called reconditioning programs. And so many of you that work in the workers' comp world, you know that this is also known as reconditioning or work conditioning or work hardening. So it's a similar concept, except for in the military, of course, it's done differently. And so the way that worked out was we developed a program for a unit where the medical readiness rate was very high, or actually very low. The rate was low. About 25% of the brigade or battalion that I was working with, which is a population of about 800 people, they were not ready to deploy. So a quarter of the troops were not ready to deploy. So we implemented this reconditioning program and produced some excellent results. After about 12 weeks, we reduced that down to about 12% of the population, which was fantastic, and the battalion commander really enjoyed it. But what I always wanted to know was, why did it work? And I had some theories. I think a lot of it had to do with observational learning and the fact that the groups were led. So these, basically, if you had an injury of any kind, you have a duty limitation. It's, you get this piece of paper that says, hey, here's your duty limitation, and you go into certain groups to exercise in. So there was a red, amber, and green groups, and then those were broken down by upper body and lower body or lower back problems. So we divided those up. We gave them different exercises to do, and so whenever I look back at the data, and did more of a qualitative assessment, really, what I began to learn was that I don't think it really had anything to do with the exercises we were doing, more so than it did the peer modeling that occurred. and also the observational learning that was occurring through that. And so what that means is there were people that were going into groups and progressing really nicely through these groups, but it was because their buddy had moved to another group. And these were group-based rehabilitation programs, if you want to think about it that way. So because they also had a squad leader or sort of like a manager level person in the military above them that was running the group, they also had an effective peer model. So someone who was exhibiting the right behaviors and someone who was exhibiting the things that were going to make them successful. And so part of Bandura's idea about observational learning is that there has to be some sort of reinforcing model there. So sort of a model of what it is that they were looking for in the optimal behavior of these soldiers. And so people started to progress through the program, so it was a great thing, and it really showed me how much we could leverage the aspects of social learning in with our rehabilitation programs, and which doesn't necessarily exist in the civilian world. However, we and this is where a new thing that I'm working on with a group called Veterans Recovery Resources. So Veterans Recovery Resources is a nonprofit organization here in Mobile, and we are trying to open up an 18-bed residential treatment facility for veterans that have substance abuse and also have PTSD, comorbid problems that they're managing these things really with substance abuse. And so what we're trying to develop right now is a peer support group. And through aspects of this peer support group, we were able to leverage this idea of observational learning. And so you kind of have observational learning, then you have social support mechanisms, and then peer support is one of these social support mechanisms. And so this has been studied somewhat in the literature and looked at peer support programs for chronic pain management within veteran populations. So my goal over the next couple of years is to develop a chronic pain self-management program for veterans that are a part of this effort. And so the executive director that I work with, he's always just great. He's a social worker, veteran, just really cool guy. And he's always talking about the can'ts and the won'ts. And so he says, really, when people are in this place in this place in the lowest levels of life, and they're really struggling with addiction and they're struggling with things, he divides people up kind of takes a simplistic approach and says, well, there are people that can't change, and then there are people that just that won't change. And so we really break that down and say, well, who are these people that can't? The people that can't are the people that will most often benefit from medical care. So they're the people that they've made attempts to change. However, they're just not able to, and that's why they can't do it. And so medical care in that instance, so psychologist. Sometimes there's medication. Medication plays a role in this as well. So these folks need this particular type of care, as opposed to those that won't. And really, what they're lacking is motivation. And so where we're thinking these people really benefit from are these peer support models, where a veteran can connect with a veteran that is that has demonstrated an ability to recover from addiction. And so when these folks are linked up, it becomes very powerful. And they have this peer support group because they have trust, they have empathy, they have shared experiences, and it becomes a very wonderful place to progress and set goals and set expectations and really become the person that you want to be. And so that's kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but I think it bodes well with what the literature says in this particular area as well. So I also wanted to drop a nugget on the idea behind chronic disease management programs. And when we're thinking about population health, we have to think in terms of populations of people. We have to think in terms of chronic disease management. So how do we create programs that successfully help people in large groups manage chronic diseases? And so observational learning, again, is a construct that we can leverage through the utilization of peer groups to help out with this. And so this is already being done. These self-management programs have been produced for Stanford for quite a while, and many departments of public health throughout the country, State Department of Public Health, they have these. But again, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but the execution of that idea, if it's very poor, then you're going to have a poor quality product, and it's not going to have the effect that you're looking for. And that's what I find in my own state when I'm looking at that. And I've examined who's running these programs, how they're being run, and they're not doing it very well right now, which creates an opportunity for physical therapists to intervene in these chronic disease management programs as a part of a lifestyle physical therapist practice. So that is sort of the direction you could go with that. I think when you look at chronic pain, so if we have people that have overcome chronic pain, and a testimony is so powerful, right? Like if you have a testimony that you've overcome a particular condition, I'm more apt to listen to you than I would be a physician that's never gone through that experience. And so, that again, how do we create environments that are supportive of this? So the way I visualize this within the lifestyle physical therapist practice model is that we're, constantly assessing someone's can't and won't. And so if they can't, and they're ready to change, and they're willing to change, and they're able to change, then we've got somebody that is, probably going to do really well with whatever target behavior they want to select. If it's physical activity, if it's nutrition, if it's sleep, whatever behavior that is, if they're if they have a high level of readiness, if they are ready and they're willing to make changes, and they're able to make changes, they've identified barriers, and through the assistance of the physical therapist or health coach, they can then select goal-setting strategies. They can begin to build self-efficacy. These things can occur, and so if that's what's happening within the clinical setting, how do we move this out into a bigger environment where the potential to change groups of people exist? And so so we have to move this person that has changed and is willing to change and is setting up themselves to become a model of change. How do we bring them out into a population of people to where they can infect, if you will, the larger group? And so I think an understanding of observational learning allows us to see how that may work within an environment. So if I'm running a practice that's located I had a discussion with a guy that owns a yoga studio last week. So if I had that yoga setting where there's group-based exercise, and I'm asking this person to get, to become more active, and they have the confidence to become more active within a group of people that are, doing yoga, or that seems attractive to them, or that's something they can set for themselves, then I got to be able to establish a network and referral source for that. Or I have to embed myself within that environment, and so that's those are applications. And so I guess in summary, and I'm getting close to the end here. So in summary, I wanted to say a couple things. One, never underestimate the power of an example that you set for your patients. Never underestimate the power of a success story, and because both of them have the power to elicit motivation and promote behavior change. And then also, I think there's 3 applications that I want to drop on you this morning too. So observational learning requires attention. So I think we have to get off the computer. We have to look in the eyes of our patients, and we have to see, hear, and feel what it is that they're experiencing, and then be able to mimic the behavior and mirror the behavior that we are wanting them to experience. So I think that's something that's a takeaway from this morning. Also, view yourself in terms of being a change agent. So I think we're always teaching someone something and adding a valuable new skill, and being able to mimic the behavior you'd like to see in your patients is also critical in an application of this. So you can also leverage teachable moments and reinforce these positive behaviors when you see them. So I think about that in terms of celebrating the successes of your patients, regardless of how big or small it is, especially the really one ones. If they have a pattern of behavior that is where they're late, and they come on time, celebrate the success. But make sure that you're on time as well. So I think those are some applications of this idea of be the change you want to see in the world. It really is based on some sound theoretical background, and it has applications to our physical therapist practice. So I hope everyone has a great week this week, and be the change.